The summer of 2003 was hot enough that the asphalt of the cul-de-sac rippled in waves. The Morrison family arrived in a beat-up Dodge Caravan, the back packed with cardboard boxes that had grown tired, looking over years of perpetual moving. The van smelled faintly of stale fast food, and the worn leather of a steering wheel that had seen too many highways. Greg Morrison gripped that wheel like it was the only stable thing in his life. Jobs came and went. Leases expired. Paychecks dried up, but somehow he always found a roof. This time, the roof had come cheap. A 2-bedroom, 1-bath shack of a house, with peeling white paint and a detached garage that leaned slightly to the left, as if trying to pull away from the rest of the property. Greg had signed the papers after the landlord. A sour man with nicotine-stained fingers leaned forward and muttered, "I'm required to tell you someone died here within the last 5 years. Won't go into specifics." Greg had shrugged. "Rent's $300 a month. I don't care if it's built on an ancient burial ground." So they moved in. The boxers piled up like squat sentinels in every room. Lids never taped, contents never fully explored. The Morrisons were used to living among half-packed lives. Carol, Greg's longtime girlfriend, tried to make the place feel like home, but even she seemed to falter when she walked. Across the warped floorboards, that creaked as though the house was trying to speak. Their son, 8-year-old Daniel, noticed things almost immediately. He was old enough to know when a sound was out of place, when a shadow didn't belong, when silence stretched too long between noises. The first week, drawers opened on their own. The bathroom sink sputtered to life in the night, coughed water into the porcelain, then went silent. The front door swayed against its hinges, even when locked. And that lock was strange, a keyhole on both sides. So even from inside, you could not leave without the key. That detail should have mattered more than it did. Then came the night of the keys. Greg was tearing apart the living room, veins in his neck straining, face red with fury. "Where are they? Where the hell are the keys?" His voice bounced off the yellowed walls. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, his small hands clenched into fists, feeling that sick heat in his chest when his father's anger filled the room. "You take them, huh? You hiding them from me. Don't lie to me, boy." Greg's words cut sharper than he meant. Stress had a way of pulling cruelty out of him, and then, tink, that was only the beginning. Every night, Greg placed the keys in a clear glass bowl on top of the massive tube television in the living room. Every morning, they were somewhere else. Sometimes in the bathroom sink, sometimes balanced on the armrest of the couch. Once inside a sealed box of pots and pans they hadn't even unpacked yet. The box had those little cardboard handle slots on each side, and the keys had been forced through one as if by a petulant child playing a cruel game. Greg tried to laugh. Carol laughed with him. Even Daniel laughed sometimes, but only because laughter was easier than admitting the truth, that the house didn't want them there. Then came the footsteps. Always around 2:30 a.m., always heavy, like boots slamming into the warped wooden boards of the hallway outside the bedrooms. They began as pacing, back and forth, as if someone couldn't settle down for the night. Daniel would pull the thin sheet up to his chin and press his eyes shut, but closing your eyes doesn't erase sound. Some nights he dared peek into the hallway, and the darkness there seemed alive, as if the shadows themselves had weight. One night, unable to take it anymore, he screamed, "Stop stomping around. I need to sleep. God damn it." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. 15 seconds stretched into forever. Then the charge came, the sound of something massive hurtling down the hallway straight for his door. His heart froze as the wood rattled under 3 vicious, pounding knocks that shook the frame. He was too terrified to breathe. The noise roused Greg, who called softly from his own room, "You okay, buddy?" His voice came to calm, too far away. But Daniel couldn't answer. His stomach twisted violently, and suddenly he was sprinting for the bathroom, his bowels betraying him mid-run. The smell, the shame, the fear, it all clung to him as he cried on the toilet, shaking, humiliated. His dad rubbed his back, murmuring, "Nothing can bug you when I'm around. You can always sleep in my room." But Daniel knew his father didn't believe his own words. A week later, Carol stayed the night. She and Greg had argued about chores before bed, petty things, but the air in the house seemed heavier than usual. At 2:47 a.m., Carol awoke to pressure on her ankle. Groggy, she blinked at the dark ceiling. Then she was yanked. Hard, she slid off the bed onto the floor, her head smacking the warped boards, pain flashing white behind her eyes. Something dragged her fast into the hallway, nails scraping uselessly against the ground. By the time she realized what was happening, she was halfway down the hall, screaming. The grip vanished, and she scrambled back, tripping over herself, breath coming in ragged sobs. She told Greg everything, her voice shaking, and though his face stayed stoic, his jaw trembled with fury at something he couldn't punch, couldn't fix. The next day, Daniel was sent to his aunt's house. Greg insisted it was for safety, but Daniel knew his father was just trying to keep him from seeing what the house was doing to them. Greg stayed behind while he searched for another rental. Friends came to help him pack. Every single one mentioned the same thing within minutes of stepping inside. "Hey, didn't know you had a dog. Cute little white thing." They would glance toward the hallway or the kitchen as though expecting the animal to trot into view. But the Morrisons didn't own a dog. One night, as boxers stacked higher and the house grew emptier, Daniel returned briefly to collect some of his things. Carol's yoga ball sat in the hallway. She had brought it weeks earlier, telling Daniel to be careful, but of course, an 8-year-old boy wasn't careful. He loved kicking it, bouncing it, tossing it. That night, he rolled it gently down the hallway to Carol, who sat cross-legged, waiting to roll it back. It bounced once, twice, and then froze. Suspended. The ball hung in the air for a fraction of a second, then rolled back toward Daniel. He blinked, confused, his young mind trying to rationalize what he had just seen. Carol's face went pale, her lips tightening. She stood abruptly. "I don't want to play anymore," she whispered. Her eyes didn't leave the hallway shadows. The house was alive. Worse, the house was angry. Nights stretched longer. Doors slammed without wind. The keys vanished one final time, never to be found again. The pacing footsteps grew louder, faster, until it sounded like an entire crowd marching back and forth outside the bedrooms. Greg told himself he'd last one more week, just long enough to find another place. But even he admitted he sometimes locked himself in the bathroom with the shower running just to drown out the sound of boots slamming on wood. The final night, Greg swore he felt a hand on his shoulder while he packed. A man's hand, heavy, firm, almost companionable. He turned quickly, but no one was there. When the Morrisons finally left, the house sagged into silence, waiting for the next family, for the next set of keys, for the next child to cry out in the dark. Even years later, Daniel would wonder about the people who lived there after. Did they hear the pacing footsteps at 2:30 in the morning? Did they lose their keys, find them shoved into impossible places? Did they ever see the little white dog trotting down the hallway, disappearing into shadows too deep for such a small house? Or maybe the house only ever wanted them. And maybe it still does.